final notes for understanding the basics of Magento 2. We didn't install a theme during this tutorial because at the time of this recording there are no working free themes on the Magento marketplace for our version. But to reiterate what I said in the extension installation video, that process is the same as installing an extension. When you've selected a theme and installed it on your site, enabling it is for the most part pretty easy. Just go to Content, Configuration, and edit this website. And right here at the top, Applied Theme, that new theme will be listed along with these themes that come with Magento out of the box, and you'll simply select it and make sure you save your configuration. You can also schedule automatic theme changes at Content, Schedule. These fields look a little confusing at first until you realize that this is just for filtering down any scheduled design changes that you've already put in place. To add a design change, you simply click this button, and we're not going to go through it, but you just tell it what design you want put in place, starting at what date and ending at what date. And if it ends and it doesn't have another design to return to, it will default back to the default design that you established in the previous page. And finally, don't forget that, as we saw earlier in the tutorial, if you want, you can also change the theme for individual products in the settings for any given product. Do keep in mind that when you install and begin using a new theme, in many cases, it will drastically alter the look and in some cases the layout of your website. So you often may need to do some reorganization of blocks and widgets with different themes to get everything where you want it. Aside from themes, before you go live with your website, you're also going to want to return to Stores, Configuration, and basically scan through every major section after General, which we've already covered. So we're not going to look at everything, but I will touch on a few things. First, the catalog section here is going to be important and has a ton of configuration options, even just under catalog. You see we have a lot of things to take a look at here to get our site, again, looking and working the way that we want it to. One thing that I will mention specifically is to consider in the product fields auto generation group, consider taking name out of mask for meta description. So that way you just have description in double curly brackets. When you have the name here, you may have noticed this way earlier in the tutorial, where it has the name of the product and then the description, and it sort of looks random. It doesn't really flow together very well. So I prefer to change this to just the description and save the configuration. And of course, you'll need to flush your cache. I'm not going to worry about doing that right now. You remember how to do that. We've done that plenty of times. Then, of course, we have settings related to inventory, our XML sitemap, RSS feeds. Most of the configuration options in these sections of the sites, in these sections of the backend, are pretty self-explanatory. Customers, we've gone over a good bit of this. We've set up newsletters. Wishlist is pretty self-explanatory. Customer configuration has configuration options, again, specifically just for customers. Then you can manage promotions and your persistent shopping cart. We've gone over most of what's here in sales. Services is really for more intermediate to advanced users. But as you can see, it gives you settings for things such as API and OAuth. Then advanced, as you can guess, has a number of advanced settings. I will note that under admin, if you click on that, then under security, you may want to consider admin account sharing. If you're using one admin account that multiple people are sharing, then you'll want to mark this as yes. When it's marked as no, then as you can read here, two people cannot be logged in under the same admin account at the same time. If it detects that that's going on, it'll close down one of the sessions. So that's something to keep in mind if you plan on doing things that way. System is fairly technical stuff that you won't normally need to change. Advanced, we'll click on that one. This one is important to know. It's not really all that advanced. This really just allows you to disable extensions. So if you've installed something and you end up not using it, or worse, it messes things up in some way, after you've started using it, you can disable it here. So if our cookie compliance extension started doing something weird to our website, we can simply disable that in the core and save configuration. But we're not going to do that because we're not even really using cookie compliance right now. It's not doing anything wrong. And then there are a couple final steps to take just to sort of undo some of the things that you've had in place this far. Make sure that under Stores, Configuration, Sales, Payment Methods, you want to make sure you switch your payment methods here from Sandbox to Production for whichever payment methods you are using on your site. So if we're using Braintree, we'll need to click Configure. Make sure our environment is not Sandbox anymore, but is Production. Otherwise, it's not going to work for a production website. And that's just true for whichever one of these methods you're using. If it's one of these PayPal or whatever, just make sure you go into Configure and change environment to Production and save your configuration. You need to do essentially the same thing over here at Shipping Methods, particularly for these below the table rates. UPS, USPS. Notice currently for USPS, this one's not enabled, but just assume we were using it. So if we wanted to do USPS, obviously we would need that marked yes. Hopefully we would have already done that at this point if we plan on using it. But we would also need to change mode to live. You need to make sure you're live and not in development in order for these shipping methods to function properly. You'll also need to turn off your demo store notice if you have it turned on. As a reminder, this is found over at Content, Configuration, and Edit Your Store. Down here, open up the HTML head group. I know it's kind of a weird place for it to be, but this is where Display Demo Store Notice is. We have not kept this on for our tutorial, so we don't need to do anything here. But if you were displaying a Demo Store Notice, obviously you'll want to turn that off before you go live with your store. And finally, if you're with a web host that offers a temporary domain for you to work in, like I am, make sure you switch the production-ready site to the live domain over at Stores, Configuration, General, Web, and then base URLs and base URLs secure. Right now, it's set to our temporary domain, and we would of course want to change this and this to our live domain. The entire process of doing that, of going from development to production, is going to vary a little bit based on what kind of server you're using, or rather what your web host's limitations are. You may not have a temporary domain, especially if you're not using a web host that specializes in Magento. So you may just be using your live domain all along and developing there. Whatever the case may be, before you go live, go to this place and just make sure that you have your real domain in the base URL and secure base URL. And again, to finish everything off, you're going to want to save your configuration and flush your cache as always. And that wraps it up for this tutorial. Thank you so much for following me through this introduction to Magento 2, and thanks again to Nexus for sponsoring this series and for providing the hosting environment for this tutorial's demonstration site. There's no getting around the fact that Magento 2 can be a difficult platform to learn, and that at the time of this recording there are still some bugs that the developers should work out. However, it remains a widely used and powerful CMS for e-commerce sites. At this point, you should have a basic understanding of how to build your Magento 2 site, how to manage your store in the backend, how to create various types of products, and how to generally customize your site to look and work the way you want it to. From here, you should be comfortable enough to explore it a little more on your own, and at least have a stepping off point for figuring out most of the things that you don't yet quite know how to do. I'm Robert Ring with OS Training, and thanks again for watching.